Good morning. We start session 32. At this point, we really start working on actual quarter 4 items. Okay, and we start with some surgery. Okay, and before that actual surgery, um, let us just work out a few terms among ourselves just for 10 days. Those who knew these terms earlier, they anyway know, and those who did not know earlier, after 10 days they don't need to care. But these 10 days, at some occasions, I might say some of these things. So let me make things clear. A subject and a single verb in the proper role of a verb constitute a clause. Okay? That is, there may be other things associated with them, but to define something called a clause, you need a subject and a single verb, okay, in the proper role of a verb. When I say proper role of a verb, what I mean is that third forms, fifth forms, and 2 plus a verb, these kinds of structures are not counted as verb in this sense. Okay? Now, you earlier knew that a sentence also must have a subject and must have a verb, either actually spelled out or implied. Okay? So, that means a sentence can have a single clause, and such a sentence we will call as a simple sentence. Okay? And most of the quarters 1, 2, 3 was concerned with simple sentence, okay? Simple sentences, except for occasional departures. There may be sentences with more than one clauses, and if all the clauses are equally prominent, then we call such a sentence as compound sentence. Okay? Some of them we have studied earlier. Remember this: Ram went to forest and Lakshman followed. 2 clauses connected by this connector. Ravi will paint the house, or he will ask his brother to paint it. Okay? This he will may go missing in the compound sentence. Or we went together but entered his office one at a time. What it means is that we went together but we entered his office one at a time. Okay? So, and the fourth, in this case, this so is actually not connected in the same sentence as the other upper one, previous one, but it could be so. It could be the other team went inside together, comma, so they crowded his office and he was angry. So, all these are examples of compound sentences, okay, where both clauses are equally prominent and they could have been independent sentences. Okay. There may be a sentence in which there is one main clause and other clauses operate as something, operate in some roles, either subject or object, that is something having the force of a noun, or as a qualifying word, qualifying a noun or a pronoun, that means operating as an adjective, or it may be qualifying something else, means a verb or adjective or adverb, then it will be operating as an adverb. So, such sentences in which there is one main clause and other clauses operate as small items here and there, they are that sentence, that kind of a sentence is called a complex sentence. And there may be some sentences which are of a more involved structure, that is, at the top level it may show one structure, but when you go inside a clause, that clause may show some more complicated structures inside. So, such things are also possible. Okay? So, let us take some examples from a famous story, The Resident Patient. So, these are the sentences which we will analyze. Okay? And this process of analysis of sentences, that is called parsing. In fact, when we were studying interpretation, what we were effectively doing was parsing. Okay. But we were trying to express the meaning of the sentence in the common local language. Now, even without that common local language translation thing, if we do the rest of the task, that is the technical that is technically known as parsing. Okay. So, these are the sentences which we will be taking as examples. Okay. So, take 5 minutes and try to study these sentences and try to figure out what kind of sentence each of them is. So, first one, his characteristic talk with its keen observance of detail and subtle power of inference held me amused and enthralled. Okay. So, here his characteristic talk, that is the subject of the sentence about which something is being said. So, this is the subject, and what is the subject doing, or what did the subject do? His characteristic talk held. Okay. So, held is the verb actually operating like the proper verb, and held whom? Me, that is object. Okay. Now, other things, amused and enthralled. How it held me? It held me amused and enthralled. So, these are two adverbs which are qualifying this verb held. Apart from that, his characteristic talk, subject. What kind of talk? What kind of characteristic talk? So, the qualifier comes here, with its keen observation of detail and subtle power of inference. Okay. I write with a pen. With a pen is a phrase. It does not have its own subject or its own verb. Okay. So, it is a phrase, and with something something, with what? Its keen observation of detail and with subtle power of inference. So, these two things are connected with. So, with these two things. So, what kind of characteristic talk? Talk with these things. Okay. So, this entire phrase is operating like an adjective to this word talk. Another adjective to the same word talk is characteristic. Okay. So, what kind of a sentence is this? A subject, a verb, an object, two adverbs qualifying the verb, and one extra adjective, which is this huge thing, phrase, that is qualifying this. Okay. So, that means from here to here actually is the subject. Okay. Talk is the main subject word. Okay. So, you can take the sentence as talk held me. I ate a fruit. Okay. Subject, verb, object. Talk held me. What kind of talk? Characteristic talk. Whose? His. Again, something more about the talk. Okay. With several details, with several properties. What properties? This and that. Okay. So, this turns out to be a simple sentence. Okay. Fine. Take another. This was a tall young man, surprisingly handsome, with a dark fierce face and the limbs and chest of a Hercules. Okay. Open it. This, subject, was, verb. Was, with was you cannot complete a sentence. So, you need something else after that. Okay. So, this was what? So, a tall young man. Okay. So, this is a complement, and now this man. Some more things about the man. So, man is a noun. So, more things are coming which are qualifying what kind of a man we are talking about. Surprisingly handsome. So, handsome qualifies man, surprisingly qualifies handsome. Okay. Okay. So, the main sentence is this was a man. Okay. And man, tall young man. What kind? Surprisingly handsome. Something more in the description of that man is this phrase with a few things. What are those things? A face, the limbs and chest. Okay. The limbs and chest of a Hercules. This of a Hercules itself is, for that matter, a phrase. Okay. And with a dark fierce face and this. Okay. This whole thing qualifies this man, which restricts the idea of the man. What kind of man? This man. Okay. So, this is also a simple sentence, subject, verb, single, okay? Only one clause, one subject, one verb, and then other details. Okay? This kind of exercise will help you in breaking down a long complicated sentence and understanding its meaning appropriately. Fine. I made notes of my patient's pulse and temperature, tested the rigidity of his muscles and examined his reflexes. I is the common subject with these three clauses. I made notes something something, I tested the rigidity of something something, I examined his reflexes. So, there are three clauses, okay? And all three clauses are equally prominent. None of the clauses is dependent on the other in the sense of an adjective or adverb or object or the subject or something like that. Each of the clauses is equally prominent compared to others. Okay? So, I did three things: made notes, tested the rigidity, examined his reflexes. So, verb, object, and so on. Notes. Qualifier to this notes. Notes of what? This qualifier, qualifying the notes. Similarly, rigidity. Rigidity of what? Not bones, of his muscles. Okay? So, that is qualifying this. So, these are phrases, and in a way they are qualifying this. Okay? These are not clauses, make note. These do not have their own subjects or verbs. Okay? These are phrases which we have studied earlier. Okay? We continue. The hall door had been closed, but not shut. Okay? Now, here several parts can be interpreted in several ways. The hall door had been what? Closed but not shut. Okay? Closed is an adjective, you know, third form. Shut is also an adjective, not shut. Okay? And these two adjectives are connected through this connector but. So, these are qualifying this. Okay? In this case, they are with been, so not operating as adjectives, but you can say adverbs. Or alternatively, you can say that had been closed is our verb. Okay? So, we have seen that have plus been plus third form, that is the past perfect, okay, perfect tense construction. So, in this case had, okay, because past perfect. The hall door had been closed, but the hall door had not been shut. Okay? So, this is a subject, this is a verb, and that is it. This is one clause and this is another clause. So, in this interpretation, this turns out to be a compound sentence. Both the clauses are equally prominent, okay? And they are in opposition to each other because they are connected through the connector but. Okay? Next example. Then your eyes ceased to pucker, but you continued to look across and your face was thoughtful. So, here in this then is actually exterior item. This then is establishing a connection of meaning with the previous sentence. This sentence proper starts from your eyes. Your eyes ceased to pucker. This could have been an independent sentence. That is one clause. Okay? Your eyes is a subject, ceased verb, and this is object. Ceased what? Ceased to pucker. Okay? But after this connector, the second clause. Second clause is also equally prominent as the first, and inside that second clause there are two further clauses. Okay? You continued to look across. You continued what? To look across. And your face was thoughtful. Okay? So, this is also a compound sentence of two clauses. The second clause itself is composed of two clauses. Okay? So, all three of them are equally prominent, nobody is dependent on anybody else. Okay? Continue. I may say with confidence that he never had occasion to regret his speculation. What is the main sentence? I may say. Okay? Subject, verb. Okay? how I may say, with confidence. So, this adverb is qualifying this. Okay. I may say what? Object. Now, you see, as object, this entire thing is coming, that is the connector, leave that out. The remaining part itself could have been a sentence. He never had occasion to regret his speculation. This could have been a sentence, but in this particular sentence, it is doing a subsidiary role, it is performing a subsidiary role, a helping role. Okay. So, it is a subordinate clause and operating as what? Actually, this whole thing, that he never had occasion to regret his speculation, that whole thing is sitting as the object. I may say this statement. Okay. So, this statement is the object, that he never had occasion to regret his speculation. So, subject, verb. Actually, this never could be interpreted as the adverb to had, okay. But together also putting it as verb makes sense. What he never had? Occasion. What kind of occasion? To regret his speculation. Okay. So, this is an example of a complex sentence in which an entire clause is operating as an object, okay, noun. Okay. In the example which you read to me, the reasoner drew his conclusions from the actions of the man whom he observed. Okay. First, throw away the parts which are not the actual thing. The actual thing in the example which you read to me, the reasoner, okay, who did anything, the reasoner drew conclusions. Okay. So, the reasoner is the subject. What did the subject do? Drew what? His conclusions. So, the reasoner drew his conclusions, subject did object. Okay. So, this is the actual skeleton of the sentence. Now, where did he draw it? In the example. Okay. Which example? Example which you read to me. Now, this which you read to me, this you read to me could be a sentence. Okay. Now, which you read to me, this thing is particularly pointing out which example, okay, restricting, okay, or qualifying example. So, this is a phrase. Even inside the phrase, you have a full clause sitting. A full clause which could supply a full sentence, you read to me, is here standing subservient to just a word inside a phrase, which itself is not a sentence. Okay. So, in the example, which example? Which you read to me, the reasoner drew what did he draw? His conclusions. Now, this phrase is qualifying these conclusions. All conclusions of his life, or what kind of conclusions? From the actions, conclusions from the actions. Okay. Which conclusions? Particular conclusions from the actions. This whole thing is the phrase in which from the actions, in that actions is being qualified by this phrase, which is of the man, something something. Man is being qualified with whom he observed. Okay. So, this qualifies this man, of the man, this whole thing qualifies which actions, from the actions of such and such kind, this whole thing qualifies the conclusions, which conclusions, and conclusions is actually the object of this sentence. Okay. So, this has one main clause, the reasoner drew his conclusions, from the actions etc. is coming as a phrase to this, from the actions of the man, this whom he observed is another clause which is qualifying man, this adverb phrase which qualifies drew, in that the word example is being qualified by this adjective clause. Okay. So, these are two dependent clauses, okay, subordinate clauses. This clause is qualifying example, this clause is qualifying this, okay, and others are phrases of course. Okay. So, this is a complex sentence with one main verb and one main clause and 2 subordinate clauses. Okay. Slowly our examples are becoming bigger. So, when I saw you throw down your paper and enter upon a train of thought, till now nothing has started. Subject has not come into picture. Subject is going to come into picture now. I was very happy. This is the main part of the sentence. To have the opportunity of reading it off and eventually of breaking into it as a proof that I had been in rapport with you. This is troublesome sentence. Many of our students across the net will have difficulty with it. So, let us break it. So, this is a connector connecting this particular sentence through meaning with the previous sentence. Okay. So, at this time when something happened, I was very happy. And what was that time? When I saw you this thing. Okay. And how did I see you? Throwing and entering, throwing down your paper and entering upon a train of thought. Okay. Upon a train of thought happens to be a phrase. Okay. So, I saw you in these two things, okay? These two ways. So, when this happened, so this is a phrase, this is a clause operating as adverb to was. Okay? This is adverb of time, when, answering the question when. Okay? And that is very clear because it even starts with when. Okay? So, at that time when these things happened, I was very happy. Why? To have the opportunity of doing several things, okay? Of reading it off and of breaking into it. Eventually is an adverb qualifying this, and both of these, of reading it off and of breaking into it, these two things are qualifying the opportunity. So, opportunity, what kind of opportunity? Opportunity of what? Of reading it off, of breaking into it. Okay? So, these two things qualify opportunity. And have what? The opportunity. How? As a proof. Have means have in what sense? Okay? As a proof. Qualifying the proof is this clause, that I had been in rapport with you. So, this phrase is actually qualifying this. Okay? And this entire thing, that I had been in rapport with you, is qualifying the word proof. And incidentally, this whole thing is a phrase having inside it embedded many other things. Okay? The small matter which I have chronicled under the heading of A Study in Scarlet, and that other later one connected with the loss of the Gloria Scott, may serve as examples of this Scylla and Charybdis, which are forever threatening the historian. Okay. So, what is the main sentence? Let us try to see that. The small matter may serve as examples. The small matter which I have chronicled under this and that other later one. The small matter and that other later one may serve as examples. This is the actual sentence. Okay. So, the small matter and that other later one may serve as examples. This is a sentence. Okay. Which small matter? Qualifier comes here. Which I have chronicled where? Under the heading of A Study in Scarlet. Okay. So, this adjective is qualifying the matter. Okay. The small matter. Which small matter? This one. Okay. And that other later one. Which one? Connected. Connected how? With what? With the loss of the Gloria Scott. Gloria Scott was a ship. Okay. So, the small matter and that other later one, qualifying the matter with this, so that the listener knows which matter we are talking about or he is talking about. And that later one, here also the listener should know which later one is being talked about. So, says connected with this thing. Essential thing is this and this. May serve as examples. Examples of what kind? Of this Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla and Charybdis is taken as in the sense of the horns of a dilemma, in which both options look equally bad. Okay? So, examples qualified by of this Skylar and Charybdis, and also qualified by this, which are forever threatening the historian. In this case, an alternative explanation, alternative interpretation also could have been taken by interpreting this which as and these. In that case, this would not be a complex sentence. In that case, it would be a compound sentence. Then the actual sentence would read as the small matter and that other later one may serve as examples of this thing, and these are forever threatening the historian. So, that is one independent clause, that is this is another independent clause. This could have been another interpretation, but right now in this picture we have been taking the interpretation that this is qualifying this. Okay. So, in the qualifying or restrictive sense, this is an adjective clause, adjective to this example. On the other hand, if we interpret this which in the sense of and these, that is the continuative sense in which there is no restriction on example by this we are telling a few other things. Okay. So, in that case it would be a compound sentence with this as an independent clause. Okay. So, such examples you find quite often in books that you read. You need not make such boxed things in every case, but mentally you need to work out these connections, and whatever you do, if you get the meaning of sentences when you read, this connection and this interlinking you must be doing anyway. Okay. So far regarding syntax today. Let us talk a little about words. Okay. I am writing a word here, and I will ask you people to tell me words which are somehow etymologically related to that. Okay. So, act. Okay. Act is what? Adjective, noun, adverb, verb, what?
Verb.
Noun and verb both. Okay. So, maybe we write it. Okay. And maybe I start. Okay. So, active. Anybody can see that there is a connection between act and active. Okay.
Action.
Enact.
Action.
Good. Somebody said react.
Actor.
Actor. Good. Okay. Before we forget, active is what? Adjective. Action? Noun. Actor? Enact? React? Okay. What else? Activity. Fine.
Deactivate.
Oh, before that we start with activate. Okay. Activity, activate, deactivate, and so on. Okay, we can go on. Okay. How many you expect? How many you expect, Durga? 30. Good. How many you expect? Oh, only. Karthik? Oh, good. High expectation. Arinam?
50.
Okay. So, maybe somebody can spend some time and count how many are there. Okay. So, it is more than 30 right now here, and of course, I am assuring you there are more. This is more than 30.
38 to 40.
Yeah,
38
it
to
is
40.
roughly 37. The person who made it says 37. Okay. So, but I can tell you that if we hunt well, we will find more. But we did not feel the necessity of hunting so badly. Okay. So, like this, you can see the entire connection of so many words together. And you know, studying, analyzing these connections is a great help in learning words. and when you read a book, you come across a word counteractive. Okay. Before that, perhaps you did not hear that word. Okay. So, first time when you find the word counteraction or counteractive in a story, you say counter, counter, opposite. Okay. Not bad. Action, act, action. So, action you know. Okay. Counteraction you know the meaning. Counteractive immediately you know the meaning. Okay. So, then at the same time you say okay. So, counteract meaning also I understand. Okay. So, like this many things you can understand even without looking up the dictionary. Okay. So, you need to develop a habit of seeing a word and mentally thinking of its connection with other words. So, connection from the root. So, there may be some suitable connection through the meaning also, and with those meanings, with those connections, quite often we understand the word roughly and we understand the context to a good extent. Okay. So, of course, when we write it like this, if we ask you to do a similar exercise, we will not insist on you that you make this kind of a structure and this kind of diagram and so on, and because everybody will not feel like doing this. Okay. So, in those exercises, even if you submit a list of words in this manner, we will be equally happy. Okay. So, if you say that I do not have time to nurture the entire tree and I do not have the space to keep the tree, I do not have a garden like you. So, fine, you take the root and the branches and the fruits of the tree and keep it in a tub, we do not mind that. Okay. So, that is this tub. Okay. So, like this you go on putting things, okay. But we want you to write or make note of the part of speech against every word. Okay. And then only when it appears in a context you get the meaning correctly, and then only you can use those words appropriately. Okay. So, connection through meaning and the part of speech you should be identifying properly. For example, this word is both noun and adjective, and the root word itself is both verb and noun. Okay. So, in the case of multiple identity, you should recognize that also. In many cases, it is not so easy to identify the multiple identities. Okay. So, this is what we start our module 4 with, and like this many other things we will have on the way. Thank you.